Tonight's journey begins in a place we trust most, an archive. Not on a battlefield, not in a legend, but in a silent room, where history sleeps. Before we begin, like the video and subscribe if you enjoy true stories that challenge everything we think we know. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because this story stretches far beyond one city, one country, or one century. Now, dim the lights, leave the modern world behind, and join me as we uncover a civilization that history tried to forget. The Harvard University archives smelled like old wood, dried glue, and secrets. Eleanor Hayes learned to love that smell the way some love the scent of rain. She was 24, a doctoral candidate in early American history, and one of the few students crazy enough to volunteer for archival duty past midnight. She wasn't supposed to be there alone, but Professor Wellington trusted her. Besides, the only other person who might have been working that late, the night security guard, Frank, was more likely asleep than patrolling. Eleanor clicked on her desk lamp and opened the wooden crate marked uncatalogued, acquired 1897 private estate, Salem, Ma. Salem. That always meant trouble. Most boxes from Salem contained the same predictable things: church records, court transcripts, family Bibles, and the occasional lock of hair, which Eleanor tried never to think too much about. But this box was different. Inside, wrapped in layers of deteriorated cloth, was a fragment of leather-bound parchment, not paper, stained with something dark and brittle. And carved into the leather, barely visible in the lamplight, was a symbol. An eagle with two heads, its wings spread, holding a broken sword. Not British, not American, not any known colonial insignia. Eleanor's pulse quickened. Inside the package was a small folded stiff paper, with a note in elegant 19th century handwriting. Recovered after the Chestnut Street fire. Origin unknown. Possibly indigenous. Do not publish. Disturbing content inside. She hesitated. Historians knew that phrase well. Do not publish. It rarely meant irrelevant. It usually meant dangerous. She untied the knot, peeled back the cloth, and revealed pages of parchment filled with meticulous drawings, cities, people, weapons, animals, but none of it matched anything Eleanor had ever studied. People wearing armor, shields decorated with star patterns, massive stone towers, ships, not canoes, ships with sails. But what froze her blood wasn't the art. It was the date, written in charcoal at the top of one page. Year 1218, in the 9th era of the Western Sea Kingdom. 3 centuries before Columbus. Eleanor leaned closer, squinting at the faded text written in a careful, unfamiliar language. Beside the script, in a different hand, someone had written a rough translation. We landed on a coast of cold winds. The land was vast, empty of men but full of beasts. We built our stronghold and called it Viridian. We thought we were alone. We were wrong. Eleanor covered her mouth. A pre-Columbian foreign settlement. In New England, with steel weapons and sailing ships. Impossible. Every American historian, every textbook, every accepted model of US history said so. Her mind sprinted. Vikings. No, this was older, bigger, more organized. A civilization. Her phone vibrated. She jumped. One new message. Unknown number. You have something that does not belong to you. Eleanor froze. She looked around the empty archive room. Her pulse hammered. The message continued. Stop reading. Leave now. Her hands shook. She typed back before she could stop herself. Who is this? The reply came instantly. A friend of history. You cannot hide in Harvard forever. Eleanor's breath caught. The light flickered. Somewhere in the hallway, she heard footsteps. Not Frank's slow shuffle, but something heavier, deliberate. Boots. Eleanor grabbed the parchment, shoved it into her backpack, turned off the lamp, and bolted for the emergency exit. As she pushed the door open, a man's voice echoed down the hall behind her. Calm, almost amused. You have no idea what you're holding, Miss Hayes. Eleanor didn't look back. She ran into the snow-choked night of Cambridge, clutching history's most dangerous secret. Behind her, the archive lights shut off one by one, as if something ancient and patient was waking up. Snow hammered the streets of Cambridge as Eleanor sprinted across Harvard Yard, her boots slipping on patches of ice. The fragment of parchment, 3 pages, brittle and priceless, felt like a brick in her backpack. She didn't stop running until she reached Massachusetts Avenue, where the late-night traffic of students, taxis, and delivery vans felt almost safe. She ducked into a 24-hour cafe, its windows fogged from heat and steam. A barista gave her a bored look. Eleanor chose a back corner, dumped snow from her coat, and pulled out the parchment. The drawings stared back at her, cities with stone battlements, towers built like lighthouses, streets paved in straight lines. Nothing indigenous, nothing Viking, something else, something organized, something powerful. At the bottom of the 3rd page, written in English, not translation, but original, was a chilling sentence. We did not know this land belonged to spirits older than memory. Eleanor shivered. Her academic mind whispered, "This changes everything." Her survival instinct whispered louder, "Someone wants it back." The man in the coat. The cafe door chimed. A tall man entered, wrapped in a long wool coat. He scanned the room, not casually, but deliberately. Eleanor closed the parchment, sliding it under her notebook. The man's eyes crossed her table, and he paused just long enough to make her skin crawl. Then he walked to the counter and ordered coffee. Her phone vibrated again. Another message from the unknown number. "If you show the pages to anyone, you will not make it to morning." Her fingers trembled. She typed, "Who are you?" The reply came instantly. "A witness." Another message followed. "There are others. They will not warn you first." Eleanor swallowed hard. Her world had inverted in a single night. 2 hours earlier, she was a history student with overdue rent and a thesis no one cared about. Now she held evidence of a pre-Columbian empire, and someone was ready to kill her for it. An unlikely ally. The cafe door chimed again. This time, a familiar voice broke through the noise. "Ellie." Eleanor jumped. It was Mark Reynolds, a fellow graduate student, lanky, brilliant, perpetually undercaffeinated. He was studying early Native American linguistics. If anyone could help decipher the script, it was him. "I've been texting you for hours," he said, dropping into the seat across from her. "Are you okay? You look pale." Eleanor hesitated. She didn't trust him. She didn't trust anyone. But she needed help. "Mark," she whispered, "I found something in the archives. Something ancient. Something impossible." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Define impossible." She took out the parchment slowly, revealing just 1 page. Mark's eyes widened instantly. "Where did you get this?" "Salem Archives. Uncatalogued box." Mark leaned closer, studying the script, tracing it with his fingertip. "This isn't Algonquin. It's not Iroquoian. It's not even related to known continental language families." He glanced up, eyes bright with the thrill of discovery. "This is an old world language." Eleanor nodded. "I thought so too." Mark's face darkened. "If this is real, Ellie, it means a European, or Eurasian, presence in North America centuries before the Norse. A full settlement, not exploration." He stared at the page again, awestruck. This would rewrite American history. Eleanor whispered, "Someone already tried to hide it." Mark looked at her sharply. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, every light in the cafe flickered, once, twice, then died. Darkness swallowed the room. A collective murmur rose. Then footsteps. 3 sets. Heavy, purposeful. Eleanor grabbed the parchment and shoved it in her backpack. Mark hissed, "What's happening?" The front door smashed open. Cold air rushed in. A man's voice said, in a calm, educated accent, "Miss Hayes, hand over the documents and no one will be harmed." Panic erupted. People screamed, ducked, ran. Mark muttered, "How do they know your name?" Eleanor didn't answer. She grabbed his wrist and whispered, "Back door, now." They sprinted between tables, knocking chairs aside. Behind them, a man barked, "Stop them before they reach the street." The alley. Snow fell heavier outside, turning the alley into a white corridor. Mark gasped, "Ellie, what the hell?" She cut him off. "There's more. There's an entire journal. Maps. Dates. Descriptions of settlements. A lost civilization, Mark breathed. Or a forgotten one, Eleanor said. They slipped on ice, crashing behind a dumpster. Boots pounded the pavement nearby. The men weren't panicked. They were methodical, practiced. This wasn't random. This was a retrieval mission. Mark whispered, "Who are they?" Eleanor didn't know, but somewhere in her memory, the note from the box flickered. "Do not publish. The Society." The men stopped at the mouth of the alley. One of them spoke, voice cold and controlled. "Miss Hayes, what you hold does not belong to you. It belongs to the Viridian Society." The name was unfamiliar, yet she felt an instinctive chill. The voice continued, "Return the pages, and we will escort you unharmed. Refuse, and history will forget you." Mark grabbed her hand. "We're not giving you anything." A pause, then 3 muffled clicks, gun safety switches. Eleanor whispered, "Run." They bolted, snow exploding beneath them. Gunshots cracked the night, sharp, echoing, deadly. A bullet hit the brick wall inches from Eleanor's head. Mark screamed, left. They turned into a courtyard, slipping again. Somewhere behind them, a siren wailed, a police cruiser responding to the panic at the cafe. The men stopped firing, then disappeared into the shadows. Not running, not frightened, just gone. Catching their breath, they reached the Charles River before they stopped. Both of them panting, shaking, soaked in freezing snow. Mark said, voice raw, "Ellie, what the hell did you find?" Eleanor opened her backpack, pulled out the parchment, and let the river wind flutter the pages. "Evidence of a forgotten empire," she whispered. "In North America, 800 years ago." Mark stared at her, "and people willing to kill to keep it buried." Eleanor nodded. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. "Midnight," Mark said. "What do we do now?" Eleanor looked up at the snowy Boston skyline, the lights of the city reflecting off the dark river. Her voice was steady, despite the fear burning in her chest. "We finish what someone else started. We find the rest of the journal. And we tell the world the truth." Mark swallowed. "And the people who tried to kill us?" Eleanor zipped her backpack. "They just became part of the story. They didn't go home. Home meant addresses, records, patterns. Home meant predictability, and predictability meant death." Eleanor and Mark ended up in a cheap hotel on the edge of Boston, its hallways lit by flickering neon tubes, the kind of place where anonymity was not just accepted, it was expected. Inside their room, Eleanor spread the parchment fragments across the bedspread, careful not to tear their fragile edges. Mark sat cross-legged, notebook open, eyes burning with intensity. He looked less like a sleep-deprived grad student and more like an archaeologist on the verge of decoding a curse. Which, in a way, he was. The symbol, at the center of the largest fragment, was the 2-headed eagle. Eleanor traced it with her thumb. "Every empire has a myth," she murmured. "Rome, Byzantium, the Habsburgs. The 2-headed eagle always means dominance. Control over East and West." Mark scribbled notes. "But why North America? Why settle here in the 1200s? There was nothing to conquer." Eleanor shrugged. "Or maybe there was." Mark stopped writing. "You think they fought indigenous nations?" Eleanor didn't answer. The truth hung heavy. History was violent. Colonization was violent. The past did not need our permission to be ugly. She flipped the parchment. Behind the symbol was a block of text, nearly in perfect condition. Mark leaned close, speaking slowly as he deciphered the transliteration. "We left the old world in great fire. We sailed for 40 days to escape the hunger and the plague. The sea killed half our fleet. Storm and poison killed the rest." Eleanor blinked. "Poison?" Mark nodded. "Waterborne disease. Maybe famine. Something wiped him out before they arrived." Eleanor exhaled. "So America wasn't a conquest. It was a refuge." "Yes, a last chance." They kept translating. "We were soldiers once, and we carried the law of the empire with us. We thought the gods had abandoned us. But on this shore we saw the green lights in the night sky and believed the land welcomed us." Mark frowned. "Green lights? Aurora?" Eleanor asked. "Not in Massachusetts." "No," Mark said. "Not unless something catastrophic happened to the atmosphere." They both sat silent for a moment. Beyond the parchment, beyond the words, a picture formed. Thousands of refugees, warriors, rulers, sailing to a world undeveloped, unclaimed. Not missionaries, not explorers, survivors of a dying empire. The map, the second fragment contained a map, faded, but unmistakable. A coastline, rivers, mountains. Eleanor recognized it instantly. New England, she whispered. Look, the mouth of the Merrimack. The Charles River, Cape Ann. Mark's voice was hollow with wonder. They mapped Massachusetts in 1218. The city, marked with a sigil, sat inland, near a river fork. Beneath it, a name. Viridian. Eleanor stared. Mark whispered. They built a city, not a fort, not a village. A city. Walls, towers, infrastructure, civilization. 800 years ago. Eleanor said softly. How could they do this without leaving a trace? Mark tapped the parchment. They didn't vanish without a trace. Someone erased the traces. The neon flickered. A siren wailed outside. Boston never slept. But tonight, it felt watched. Flashback. Year 1218. The air was cold on the new continent. The ships had burned on the beach, their blackened ribs pointing at the sky like broken fingers. The survivors stood in silence, 2,000 men, women, children. Their emperors dead, their priests dead, their gods silent. Commander Arik Varro knelt in the snow, gripping a handful of frozen soil. This land is ours now, he whispered. Or we are nothing. The soldiers behind him were silent. They had crossed the Western Sea. They could not go back. A captain approached, armor dented, sword rusted with salt. What name will you give it, Commander? Arik stood, his breath a cloud. Viridian, for the green fire in the sky that spared us. Above them, faint green ribbons shimmered in the night. Not natural, not divine, something else. A child whispered. The spirits are watching. No one corrected him. Back to the present. Mark looked up from the translation, eyes wide. This wasn't a story, he said. This was recorded history. Eleanor nodded. And we only have fragments. Mark's voice sharpened. There must be more. The entire journal. The full chronicle. Eleanor pulled out her laptop. I know where to start. She typed rapidly, searching Boston's digital archives, scanning for estate sales, private collections, forgotten museum shipments tied to Salem. Within minutes, she found something. A line from a probate inventory, dated 1897. One leather-bound manuscript, in foreign hand. Transferred to private library, Beacon Hill. Secured by the order of Viridian. Eleanor whispered. There's a private archive. In Boston. Run by a secret order. Mark stared. What the hell is the order of Viridian? Eleanor closed her laptop. Whoever attacked us tonight. A knock. A sudden knock rattled the door. 3 taps. Slow. Controlled. Eleanor and Mark froze. Not the hotel staff. They would knock fast, impatiently. Another set of taps. 3. Slow. Measured. Mark mouthed. They found us. Eleanor grabbed the parchment. Mark grabbed his backpack. No plan. Just a single instinct. Run. But before they reached the window, a voice on the other side of the door said quietly, Don't be afraid. I'm alone. Silence. Then, if I wanted you dead, I wouldn't knock. Eleanor whispered. Who are you? The voice answered. I am a historian, a traitor to the order, and I am here to help you find the lost city of Viridian. Eleanor and Mark stared at each other. Mark whispered. We can't trust him. Eleanor replied. We don't have to. We just have to listen. The stranger said. Open the door. Time is running out. Eleanor reached for the lock, and the story of a buried empire began to wake up. Eleanor unlocked the door only halfway, keeping the chain latched. A single eye peered through the gap. Gray, tired, intelligent. Not a thug, not a cop. A man who had seen too much history and carried the weight of it in his posture. He lifted both hands slowly. My name is Dr. Adrian Locke, he said. I taught medieval history at Brown University for 17 years before the order recruited me. Mark stepped beside Eleanor, whispering. They recruit professors. Locke gave a humorless smile. They recruit anyone with a dangerous curiosity. Eleanor studied him. What do you want? Locke didn't blink. To stop what's coming. Something about his tone, calm, urgent, resigned, cut through her fear. She unlatched the chain. Locke stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind him, like a man trained to respect silence. He was in his 50s, maybe 60s. Gray hair, pressed coat, leather gloves. He didn't look like someone who chased people through alleys or shot up cafes. Mark crossed his arms. Prove you're not here to kill us. Locke removed his gloves and pulled a small leather-bound book from his coat, old, cracked, burned along one edge. He placed it on the bed gently, reverently. Eleanor gasped. The symbol on the cover, the double-headed eagle, was identical to the one on her fragments. Locke said, "This is one of the last surviving volumes of the Viridian Codex." Eleanor's voice shook. How many volumes were there? He answered without hesitation. 19, written over 80 years, by 4 chroniclers of the Empire. Mark whispered, "They wrote their own history." Locke nodded. They knew no one else would. Eleanor sat down. And how many are left? Locke hesitated. 3, and 2 are in Boston. A chill slid down Eleanor's spine. The Order has them. Yes, locked beneath Beacon Hill, guarded, restricted, forgotten by the world. Except for us. Mark narrowed his eyes. And us. Locke looked straight at Eleanor. You two changed everything tonight. The Order thought the fragments from Salem had been burned a century ago. Your discovery forced their hand. Eleanor swallowed. They tried to kill us. Locke didn't respond immediately. Finally, he said, the Order does not kill without permission. Someone authorized lethal action tonight. That means someone high-ranking believes you're a threat. Mark let out a shaky breath. Why? We only have a few pages. Locke touched the edge of the parchment with a scholar's tenderness. Because those pages tell the one truth the Order cannot allow. He opened the codex to a hand-drawn map. The same coastline, the same city, but this time, labeled in Latin script. Veridian, capital of the Western Sea Empire. Mark stared. You're saying there was a European empire in America centuries before Columbus? Not European, Locke interrupted quietly. No kingdom you've ever read about. No nation that survived into modern history. They vanished before the Renaissance. Eleanor whispered. But who were they? Locke hesitated, as though speaking the answer out loud was a sin. They called themselves the Aurelians, children of the Golden Empire. Mark frowned. Never heard of them. Of course you haven't, Locke said softly. The Order erased them. Flashback, year 1227, the city of Veridian. The stone walls rose 40 feet, gleaming in the winter sun. Granite from mountains miles inland. Soldiers drilled in formations. Blacksmiths forged weapons in open-air furnaces. And above all, on a high platform overlooking the city, stood the throne of the exiled king, carved from the mast of the flagship that had burned on the shore. The king's name was Quis Aurelius Varro, the last heir of his line. Young, brilliant, ruthless. He ruled with desperation, not arrogance, because he knew what hunted him across the sea might still come. At night, the sky burned green, and every night, someone prayed, not for victory, but for survival. Back to the present. Locke flipped a page. The empire prospered for 10 years. Trade, agriculture, metallurgy, fortifications. They had horses, written language, law courts. Eleanor's voice was barely audible. And the indigenous people. Locke exhaled. There was contact, negotiation, trade, peace. At first, Mark stiffened. At first, Locke closed the book. When winter came, Viridian needed grain, timber, labor. They demanded tribute. Tribes refused. Raids followed. Eleanor's stomach tightened. And the Order wants to hide this because it makes colonization look worse. Locke shook his head slowly. No, it makes us look small. What came later, the English, the Spanish, the French, were amateurs compared to the Aurelians. He leaned in. Viridian wasn't a colony. It was the last, dying ember of a world-spanning empire. And when they were cornered, when their survival was threatened, they did what desperate empires always do. Eleanor whispered. They went to war. Locke nodded. And the war ended everything. Every trace, every record, every living soul in Viridian. Mark swallowed. How? Disease? Fire? Invasion? Locke looked at him. No. He turned the page to a final entry. A single phrase, scrawled in a shaking hand. It woke in the forest. It took the sky, and it fed. Eleanor stared. What woke? Locke shook his head. No one knows. Not even the Order. Whatever destroyed Viridian, whatever hunted them, was older than the Empire itself. Mark laughed nervously. You're telling us a supernatural horror story. Locke met his gaze. I'm telling you a historical fact. Entire civilizations don't vanish without leaving bones. Unless something makes them vanish. The deal. Eleanor's hands clenched the blanket. What do you want from us? Locke answered calmly. I want your fragments. And in exchange, I'll take you into the vault beneath Beacon Hill. Mark shot up. No way. Locke stood, gathering his coat. You will not survive without me. The Order has eyes everywhere. They will find you, and when they do, they won't negotiate. Eleanor stared at him. Why help us? Why betray them? Locke hesitated. For the first time, the confident historian looked fragile. Because I spent 30 years guarding a secret that has killed thousands. And because I am tired. He turned to leave. Pack lightly. Do not use your phones. Meet me at the State House steps at dawn. Eleanor grabbed his arm. What happens at the vault? Locke paused. The truth. The whole truth. He opened the door. And then, if we are very lucky, we will leave before the Order arrives. The door closed behind him. Silence. Boston slept. Snow fell. And beneath the city, an empire waited. The vault beneath Beacon Hill. Boston at dawn was a quiet, pale ghost of itself. The snow had stopped sometime in the night, leaving the streets slick and glassy, the sky lavender with exhausted light. Eleanor and Mark reached the steps of the Massachusetts State House before sunrise, backpacks slung over their shoulders, eyes twitching at every passing car. Mark muttered, "If this is a trap, we're walking into it on a silver platter." Eleanor replied, "It's not a trap. If they wanted us dead, they wouldn't warn us." Mark shot her a look. "Great. We're dealing with polite murderers." Before she could respond, Adrian Locke emerged from the shadow of the building, no coat this time, dressed in heavy hiking boots and layered sweaters, carrying a canvas satchel. He nodded once. "You came." Eleanor crossed her arms. "You didn't exactly leave us options." Locke almost smiled. "No empire ever does." He led him around the side of the State House, past a wrought iron gate locked with an ornate padlock. Locke produced a tarnished brass key, then paused. "You must understand something before we go in." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Here it comes. The part where you tell us we're probably going to die." Locke looked him dead in the eyes. "No, you are going to see something that will change every assumption you've ever had about human history. And the Order will kill you for knowing it." Mark swallowed hard. "Cool, cool, totally fine." Locke unlocked the gate. They stepped into a descending stone stairway, older than the building above it. The steps were steep, slick with moisture, spiraling down into darkness. Mark whispered, "This isn't built by the city." "No," Locke said, "this predates the city by centuries." The hidden passage. Locke flicked on a flashlight, illuminating stone walls carved with the same two-headed eagle they'd seen on the parchment. 5, 6, 7 times, repeating like a warning or ownership. Eleanor traced the symbol. "Who built this?" Locke answered, "The Order, 200 years ago. To hide what they found, not what they created." "And what did they find?" He didn't answer. The tunnel opened into a massive arched corridor, brick vaulting overhead, ancient wooden beams reinforcing the walls, lantern hooks rusted into place. Mark stared. "It's like Roman engineering." Locke nodded. "Aurelians. They were masters of stone. They built roads, bridges, aqueducts. They simply adapted the architecture for the new world." He paused. "But the vault extends far deeper than this. The Order added chambers, locks, barriers, anything to contain the artifacts." Eleanor's heart pounded. "And the journals?" "In the deepest chamber, beneath 3 doors, 2 locks, and 1 ritual. Mark stopped walking. Ritual. Yes. Locke's voice was heavy, not religious. Legal. Eleanor frowned. What does that mean? Locke met her gaze. Entering the vault requires an oath. A vow of secrecy. Binding, not symbolic. Mark scoffed. That sounds medieval and dramatic. Locke didn't blink. It is medieval. It is dramatic. And it is enforceable. Eleanor asked the only question that mattered. What happens if we refuse? Locke responded calmly. You walk back up the stairs, and the order kills you before sunset. It's cleaner than letting you leave with half knowledge. Mark stared into the darkness. And if we accept? Locke adjusted the strap of his satchel. Then you will see the last written history of the Aurelians, the truth of Viridian, and the reason the empire fell. He turned and continued deeper. And then you decide if the rest of the world should know. The first door. They reached a metal door built into the stone. Steel, riveted, modern. Locke pulled a key from his pocket, inserted it, and twisted. The mechanism groaned, the door hissing open to reveal another corridor. Mark whispered, "How many people know this exists?" Locke replied, "A dozen. Half want it destroyed, half want it preserved." Eleanor asked, "And you?" Locke hesitated. "I want it understood." They reached a second door, older, wood reinforced with iron, carved with Aurelian script. Locke brushed the dust from the inscription. It reads, "Only those who carry truth may pass without fear." Mark laughed nervously. "Awesome." Already afraid, Locke unlocked the second door. The air changed. Colder, older, mustier, like the breath of something asleep for centuries. The third door, the final door, was stone, seamless, massive, immovable. No lock, no hinges, just a single indentation, the imprint of a hand. Eleanor whispered, "How do we open it?" Locke looked at her. "Blood." Mark backed away. "Oh hell no." Locke cut him off. "Not sacrifice. Identification." Aurelian guardianship was inherited through bloodlines. The order continued the practice. He removed a small knife. 3 drops. Nothing more. Mark's voice shook. "You mean they encoded the door to a family line?" Locke nodded. "The descendants of the Empire still walk the world. They just don't know." Eleanor stared. "Are you saying you're descended from them?" Locke shrugged. "I'm one of many." Bloodlines diverged, diluted, but the markers remain. He sliced his palm, just enough to draw blood, and pressed it to the stone. For one terrifying second, nothing happened. Then the stone door shuddered, ancient gears grinding, dust raining from the ceiling. It split down the middle, opening into a vast chamber. Somewhere, deep in the darkness, a faint green glow pulsed like a heartbeat. Locke turned to them. "What you are about to see is not a museum. It is a tomb, a library, a warning, and a grave of a nation that refused to die quietly." They stepped inside. The vault. Books, weapons, maps, armor, tools, skeletons, artifacts sealed in glass, illuminated by flickering lamps and pale green light emanating from a cracked stone obelisk in the center of the chamber. Mark whispered, "Jesus Christ." Eleanor walked forward, stunned. A row of helmets, crested with metal wings. Rows of tablets etched with mathematics beyond medieval Europe. Bronze weapons with alloys no ancient metallurgy should produce. And at the far end, on a pedestal, bound with iron clasps, sat 2 enormous volumes. The surviving codices. Locke approached them reverently. "Everything you need to rebuild the empire is here. The order keeps it hidden because knowledge is power, and this is too much power." Eleanor reached for the nearest volume, fingers trembling. "Then why bring us here?" Locke looked at her gravely. "Because the order no longer wants to hide this. They want to resurrect it." Mark froze. "Resurrect it? How? There's nothing left." Locke pointed to the obelisk. "You're wrong. The Empire didn't just conquer land. It conquered death." Eleanor whispered. "The green light. Yes. A weapon. A plague. A miracle. No one knows." He looked at them with haunted eyes. "But the order believes it can be awakened." Mark took a step back. "And what if it can?" Locke's voice was cold as winter stone. "Then the world will burn for a second time." Footsteps. A faint echo cut through the vault. Footsteps. Slow. Coordinated. Many. Locke's face went pale. "They're here," Mark whispered. "The order." Locke shook his head. "No, not the order." Eleanor's heart pounded. "Then who?" Locke reached into his bag, pulling out a revolver and a flashlight. His voice dropped to a whisper. The Empire had survivors. The footsteps grew louder, closer, inhumanely synchronized, and they have been waiting. The green light flared, and the vault woke up. The sentinels of the lost empire. The vault vibrated, softly at first, then with a low, resonant hum that seemed to seep into the bone. Eleanor felt it in her teeth. Mark pressed his palms over his ears. Locke whispered, "Stay behind me. Do not run." Eleanor stared into the maze of artifacts, shadows shifting between glass cases and stone sarcophagi. The footsteps grew clearer, bare, not booted. Flesh against stone. Slow, measured, rhythmic. Mark breathed. "Human." Locke answered, "Not entirely." From behind a row of armor, something emerged. A figure, tall, gaunt, pale as moonlight. Barefoot, bare-chested, skin dusted with chalk-white residue. Muscles corded with unnatural definition. Hair shaved completely. Scalp marked with dark ink, sigils, numbers, geometry. Its eyes were the worst. Glassy black, reflective, like obsidian marbles. It didn't blink. It didn't breathe. It simply looked at them. Mark's voice cracked. "What is that?" Locke whispered. "A sentinel. One of the last guardians of Viridian." Eleanor's throat tightened. "Human." Locke hesitated. "They began as human." The thing opened its mouth, slowly, mechanically, and released a sound that made Eleanor's vision blur. Not speech, not language, a signal. 3 more emerged from the shadows. Identical, featureless, silent. Mark stumbled back. "This can't be real. This is genetic modification. Or some kind of cult." Locke cut him off sharply. "No, this predates genetics, predates microbiology, predates everything you think you know about science." He raised his weapon, hand steady. "The Aurelians learned to alter the body, to purge fear, sleep, hunger, empathy. They made soldiers who obeyed until death. And after death, if ordered." Eleanor choked. "You mean, they engineered loyalty, and immortality. Not true immortality, not biological, but mental." One sentinel stepped forward, smooth, fluid, predatory. Locke lowered his voice. "Don't make eye contact. They react to focus. If you acknowledge them as threats, they become threats." Mark hissed. Too late. The nearest sentinel's head snapped toward him. The others followed perfectly, in sequence, like a single mind distributed across 4 bodies. Mark backed up until he hit a shelf of artifacts. A helmet wobbled. The sentinel lunged. Locke fired. The shot cracked like thunder inside the vault, echoing off stone, shattering a glass display. The bullet hit the sentinel's shoulder, flesh tore, muscle burst, and yet it didn't stop, didn't flinch, didn't bleed. It simply looked at the wound, head tilting, as if analyzing structural damage. Mark screamed, "Shoot its head! Shoot its head!" Locke grabbed Eleanor's wrist. "No, waste of bullets. They're not animated by pain. They're animated by directive." Eleanor's voice shook. "What directive?" Locke's eyes were grim. "Protect the codices. At any cost." The sentinels began advancing, slow, unstoppable. Locke shoved Eleanor toward the shelves. "Look for orange tags. Anything marked A12. These are control devices." They scattered, searching frantically, hands trembling, eyes scanning shelves full of relics no museum would ever dare display. Mark shouted, "Found one." A small bronze disc, engraved with concentric circles and runes, glowed faintly green in the vault light. Locke snatched it, slamming his thumb down on a raised sigil. A pulse of energy rippled outward, a sharp, invisible shockwave. The sentinels froze, literally froze, in mid-step, mid-motion, muscles locked, jaws unhinged. Mark gasped. "What did you do?" Locke didn't answer immediately. Finally, he said, "I spoke the command of their last king." Eleanor stared. "They're controlled by a symbol." "Not a symbol, a command key." The Aurelians built authority into objects. He held the disc thoughtfully. This key means, stand down. There are others. One of them means, kill. Mark whispered, and someone still knows how to use it. Locke nodded slowly, and they are not here to restrain. They are here to awaken. A metallic click echoed in the darkness. Not footsteps, not sentinels. A gun. Locke spun, raising his weapon. From the shadows emerged a tall figure dressed in a long coat, scarf pulled high, face mostly obscured. A silenced pistol rested calmly at his side. The man spoke, voice low and cultured. Dr. Locke, step away from the codex. You are relieved of your position. Locke's jaw clenched. Wellington. Eleanor's heart dropped. Professor Wellington, her advisor. The mild, grandfatherly scholar who lectured on early colonial migration. He wasn't mild now. He wasn't grandfatherly. His eyes were cold, predatory, electric. He stepped into the vault, flanked by 2 Order agents in tactical gear. My dear Eleanor, Wellington said gently, you have no idea how valuable you are. Eleanor trembled. Valuable? How? He smiled faintly. The Empire left no bloodline pure enough to activate the obelisk. His eyes gleamed. Until you. Mark grabbed Eleanor's sleeve. What is he talking about? Wellington answered for her. Her DNA markers. Her phenotype. Her immunological anomalies. She matches the royal genome. The last living echo of Quis Aurelius Varro. Eleanor felt the world tilt. Mark whispered, horrified. He's saying you're descended from them. Wellington nodded, and she can do what no one else in this vault can do. He raised the gun. Wake the Empire. Locke stepped between them. You don't know what destroyed Viridian. You don't know what that power is. Wellington's smile was thin. It wasn't power. It was a mistake. One we can correct. He aimed at Eleanor. Come, or I start killing your friends until you do. Eleanor looked at Mark, at Locke, at the frozen sentinels, at the vault that breathed with ancient, unnatural light. She stepped forward. Wellington nodded. Good girl. But Locke wasn't finished. He whispered, Eleanor, think before you choose. Eleanor whispered back, I am thinking. Her voice hardened. And I'm choosing not to repeat their history. She grabbed the command disk, and slammed her hand on a different sigil. The sentinels moved. Fast, violent, unstoppable. Not in obedience, not in peace, but in attack mode. And they weren't targeting Eleanor. They were targeting the Order. Gunfire erupted. Screams. Bone cracking. The vault dissolved into chaos. Locke dragged Eleanor and Mark behind a stone pillar as the creatures ripped into Wellington's agents. Eleanor screamed over the carnage. What command did I give? Locke answered, voice hollow with shock. You gave the one command every empire fears. He swallowed. Kill all who trespass. Eleanor stared at him. That includes us. Locke nodded. Yes. The sentinels looked up, dead eyes searching, locking onto new targets. Eleanor, Mark, Locke. Enemies. Prey. The Empire's punishment. Locke grabbed Eleanor's arm. Run. The sentinels moved. Fast as wolves. Silent as ghosts. The vault doors thudded shut behind them. And the massacre began. Eleanor trembled. Valuable. How? He smiled faintly. The Empire left no bloodline pure enough to activate the obelisk. His eyes gleamed. Until you. Mark grabbed Eleanor's sleeve. What is he talking about? Wellington answered for her. Her DNA markers. Her phenotype. Her immunological anomalies. She matches the royal genome. The last living echo of Quis Aurelius Varro. Eleanor felt the world tilt. Mark whispered, horrified. He's saying you're descended from them. Wellington nodded, and she can do what no one else in this vault can do. He raised the gun. Wake the Empire. Locke stepped between them. You don't know what destroyed Viridian. You don't know what that power is. Wellington's smile was thin. It wasn't power. It was a mistake. One we can correct. He aimed at Eleanor. Come, or I start killing your friends until you do. Eleanor looked at Mark, at Locke, at the frozen sentinels, at the vault that breathed with ancient, unnatural light. She stepped forward. Wellington nodded. Good girl. But Locke wasn't finished. He whispered, Eleanor, think before you choose. Eleanor whispered back, I am thinking. Her voice hardened. And I'm choosing not to repeat their history. She grabbed the command disk and slammed her hand on a different sigil. The sentinels moved. Fast, violent, unstoppable. Not in obedience, not in peace, but in attack mode. And they weren't targeting Eleanor. They were targeting the Order. Gunfire erupted. Screams. Bone cracking. The vault dissolved into chaos. Locke dragged Eleanor and Mark behind a stone pillar as the creatures ripped into Wellington's agents. Eleanor screamed over the carnage. What command did I give? Locke answered, voice hollow with shock. You gave the one command every empire fears. He swallowed. Kill all who trespass. Eleanor stared at him. That includes us. Locke nodded. Yes. The sentinels looked up, dead eyes searching, locking onto new targets. Eleanor, Mark, Locke. Enemies. Prey. The Empire's punishment. Locke grabbed Eleanor's arm. Run. The sentinels moved. Fast as wolves. Silent as ghosts. The vault doors thudded shut behind them. And the massacre began.